Okay. Nobody's here for the Zoom meeting that we have on Monday, but I have a couple things to say, so I'm going to say them anyway and record the meeting and and then post that. So first thing, I think I have to share a screen. I want to say something about the forum because the forum is about the sun and skin cancer. So let me see if I can share a little background information for you on skin cancer. So let's share a screen. And I'm not sure where it is here. Is that it? Nope. There it is. Okay. So when we talk about skin cancer, we have to talk about a little bit about the mechanism by which the sun damages the skin. And so this mechanism is ultraviolet light, which has it's light that has a higher wavelength than we can see. So it's very energetic, and ultraviolet light can cause the chemical bonds in some molecules to break and form chemical bonds with other molecules. And in particular, it affects proteins. And so this is why the sun causes wrinkling of the skin, is because it damages proteins. And these are the proteins like collagen and elastin that make the skin kind of soft and flexible and strong. But it also damages DNA. It causes kinks to form in the DNA strands by causing thymer bases to form this dimer type structure. It's an abnormal structure that you see. And so this damages the DNA, and we do have mechanisms to repair this, but sometimes the repairs are faulty. And so this damaged DNA, can change the sequence of bases. And sometimes this has no effect on the cell. If that part of the DNA is not being made into a protein, sometimes it leads to an altered protein. Sometimes it kills the cell. That's called apoptosis. That's not so bad because we can replace skin cells. But sometimes DNA damage does the worst possible thing. It affects the genes that control reproducing cells, that normally make sure that cells reproduce only so often and only when conditions are right. And if it does this, sometimes the cells go into uncontrolled cell division. These are transformed cells and cancer cells. And so for skin cancer, the cause of skin cancer is sunlight, ultraviolet light and sunlight. And that this doesn't happen all the time. It's a matter of how much you're exposed to ultraviolet light and how susceptible you are. But the most common types of skin cancer in the United States and all over the world or the most common types of cancers are skin cancers. In fact, there's over 4 million cases of the most common type of skin cancer. That's basal cell carcinoma. And basal cell carcinomas happen because of chronic exposure to the skin. And so these skin cancers usually happen on the shoulders, on the neck, on the ears, and the nose and face, and sometimes on the hands. The good news about basal cell carcinomas is that they are slowly spreading. They usually spread on the surface and they don't go deep, and they're easy to treat. You can surgically remove them, not too difficult. Another type of common skin cancer is squamous cell carcinoma. It's kind of similar, chronic exposure. It's slightly more likely to spread, but it's still not that an aggressive cancer and still easily treatable. The least common skin cancer, thank God, is melanoma. Melanoma is much less common, about 90,000 cases per year. But the bad news is melanoma happens in young adults. And it usually is a result of severe sunburns, and it often arises from pre-existing moles. But still, the prognosis is pretty good. Even though it's more likely to spread than the other skin cancers, if you get early treatment, more than 80% of people are going to survive 5 years. But it produces 8,000 deaths annually in the United States. Okay, so skin cancers, these are the main kinds. They're caused by exposure to ultraviolet light, chronic exposure, or severe sunburns in the case of melanoma. What normally protects you from skin cancer is melanocytes producing melanin. Melanin is a black pigment that normally prevents sunlight from penetrating deep into the skin. If you're fortunate enough that your ancestors came from the tropics, it's likely that you have the genetics to have very active melanocytes. And those melanocytes will then produce lots of melanin and your skin will be dark. Okay, and it'll be dark all the time. And you're at relatively low risk for most of the skin cancers. All of us, if we're exposed to ultraviolet light, all of us have melanocytes that respond to that by becoming more active. This is called UV induction. Okay, but that UV induction is not necessarily a healthy thing. It means that your melanocytes have already detected that you've kind of been exposed to UV, and so some damage may occur. The important thing in preventing skin cancer is to limit the exposure to ultraviolet light. Okay, exposures are highest when the sun is highest in the sky. So that's the 2 hours on either side of midday is when you have that high exposure. Very early in the morning or late in the afternoon, generally UV light is low. But if you're in the tropics, UV light's more intense. And so again, that's a problem. Okay, so in areas where you've got to be exposed to sunlight for a while, it's best to cover up with clothing, stay in the shade, and if you have to be in the sun and you want to be with your skin exposed, then we use sunscreens which absorb UV light before it reaches the deeper layers of the skin, or sunblock, which reflects that. The most important thing, though, for us light-skinned, blue-eyed people, or people that have blonde hair or freckles or moles, is to monitor skin conditions. Early diagnosis is really important because it leads to successful treatment. If you find a skin cancer early, you can just surgically remove it. Once it's spread, it's much more difficult to treat these, and then you go into radiation and chemotherapy. For melanoma, the big risk is moles, pre-existing moles that get damaged by sunburns. They start changing. Okay, they may become more asymmetrical. Their borders become irregular and grow. The colors can change, or the moles will increase in size. If you notice these, then that's really important to go in and get this taken care of. Okay. So, whoops, I want to stop the share. Okay, so that's skin cancer. There's a forum on that. There's a couple little videos on that talk about the mechanism and cells. That's an important thing. The other important thing I wanted to talk about was that there is an exam coming up later this week. That will cover chapters 2, 3, and 4, similar to the previous exams, slightly longer. Again, most of the questions you will have seen before because they will come out of the chapter quizzes, but there'll be some essay questions, and I'll put those right in the beginning. And so that you'll see those in the beginning and you can work on them there. I will have one more review tomorrow, and hopefully people will see that and get a chance to ask questions then. Okay, and start.